The island with a montage of a picturesque Caribbean island with Spanish jazz music playing in the background. The camera focuses on the source of the music. Nora, a young singer from Chicago who is performing in front of Manuel Alvarez, the most powerful business tycoon on the island. Impressed by her performance, Manuel offers for her to sing exclusively for his club in exchange for 3 times the amount she receives at her main job. Nora is flattered and wonders about the proposition when Manuel's club bartender, Akeem, accidentally spills some wine on her while serving. Akeem apologizes, and Nora acknowledges that it is not his fault. However, the degenerate, egotistical Manuel doesn't take this unwitting mistake of Akeem too kindly and lodges a knife right into his throat, killing him then and there. Nora gets horrified seeing the violent side of the mogul and has no option but to agree to his proposition of staying on the island as his private singer. In a tranquil atmosphere, the story shifts to a construction site in Los Angeles, where Mark Etheridge, a strict and quiet LAPD officer, is catching some drug dealers along with his talkative partner Phil. Meanwhile, Mark receives a call that upsets him, and quickly goes to the island. This introduces the fact that Mark is Akeem's elder brother. The two grew up on the island after their parents moved there until some tragedy caused Mark to move to LA almost 7 years ago. When Mark and his wife, Akilah, lost their stillborn daughter, it caused them trauma that led to their separation, and Mark left the island. This time, the tragedy that happened to them brings Mark back to the place he used to call home. Now he is even more determined to learn more about his brother's cause of death. After the wake of his brother, Mark goes through his brother's stuff at his parental home, where his mother informs him things on the island have significantly changed since he left. Mark is determined to make things right. Yet, even though Yvonne lost one of her sons, she's afraid that Mark will also get involved in trouble. Mark goes to his old friend, who is also the police chief on the island, named Nate Wayland. Lastly, he visits his ex-wife Akilah, who has been running a dojo for island kids for the last 3 years, and gets to know from her that the island has gradually been infested with drug problems brought by gangs from neighboring islands. To add to the misery, Manuel Alvarez has become the unofficial owner of the island, controlling its finance, business, law, and every other sector in such a way that most of the islanders depend on him for their day-to-day earnings. Akilah also informs Mark that Akeem had joined Alvarez's club as a bartender a couple of months ago, which makes Mark suspect Alvarez's involvement in his death. He goes there to get updates and leads about his brother's death, yet still fails to find something important that will help the case. Mark also meets with his childhood friend named Tessium. He retrieves Tessim's hidden bullets and weapons. Mark goes to Alvarez, and the duo share a heated exchange while measuring each other up. Regarding Akeem, he misdirects Mark to the local club and sends northern gangs to take care of him accordingly. Later, as Mark arrives at the club to interrogate the gang members about his brother's demise, a fight ensues, and Mark easily knocks the lights out of the members. Manuel dispatched a squad to track down Mark at the club, intent on eliminating him. They arrived on bikes, guns blazing, but Mark managed to evade their onslaught by seeking refuge and darting out the back door. In a desperate bid for escape, he even managed to knock one of the bikers off their ride before leaping over a nearby fence, narrowly escaping the hail of bullets. Meanwhile, the squad, undeterred by Mark's escape, shifted their focus to his home, where they believed they could find his mother, Yvonne, and eliminate her instead. With stealthy precision, they crept into the house, scouring each room in their search for their target. However, to their dismay, they found the house empty. Unbeknownst to them, Mark had already sent Yvonne to Akilah's place to ensure her safety, no matter the cost. As Nate, a police officer, arrived at the scene of the shootout in the club, he was swiftly informed about the attack on Yvonne's home. Without hesitation, he rushed to Yvonne's house to assess the situation. Upon his arrival, Nate encountered Mark, and their meeting was marked by a sense of urgency. Mark, determined to aid Nate in solving the case for the betterment of the island's people, offered his assistance. Recognizing Mark's sincerity, Nate advised him to seek out Nora, who might hold vital information regarding his brother's untimely demise. In the tense aftermath of their failed attempt to eliminate Mark, the 3 bikemen kneeling in fear as Manuel, their superior, addressed them sternly about their incompetence. With a deep breath, Manuel swiftly ordered a hood to be forcefully placed over one man's head, a chilling precursor to the impending punishment. In a harrowing turn of events, 2 of the men met their demise through this method, a stark reminder of the consequences of failure in Manuel's world. Driven by fear of facing a similar fate, one of the men hastily presented Manuel with a damning piece of evidence, a photo depicting Mark and Akilah together. However, even this desperate act of appeasement could not save him, as Manuel swiftly silenced him with a fatal gunshot to the head. Mark went to visit Nora at her home, but she hesitated to open the door. After he introduced himself as an LA police officer, Nora cautiously cracked the door open and asked for confirmation. Mark reassured her, promising to get her off the island as soon as possible, calming her nerves in the process. Nora has been confined to the island by Manuel. He ensures she remains addicted to drugs and perpetually disillusioned because she's the sole witness to Akeem's murder. However, little does Manuel know Nora is faking it all and is even avoiding drugs while maintaining her mental stability. Mark asks her for information about his brother's death and assures her that she will be safely escorted to the USA. In a pivotal moment, Nora finally discloses the truth about Akeem's death. Mark, determined to ensure Nora's safety, implores Nate to help her escape. After seeing Nora to safety, Mark returns home to share the name of the killer with his loved ones. Yvonne's reaction is one of anguish as she bursts into tears upon hearing the revelation. Armed with SMGs, cartel associates of Alvarez pay a visit to Akilah's dojo, which they find to be vacant, and as they proceed to break into her house, Mark arrives just in time to lead her and his mother to safety. A shootout takes place inevitably, leading to the deaths of a couple of cartel operatives. Nate arrives at Akilah's house, gets involved in the shootout as well, and somehow survives. Realizing he might not get the chance to see the end of this investigation, Nate gathers his findings and entrusts them to the local church's priest. Mark entrusts the safety of his mother to his childhood buddy Tesium. But contrary to Mark's wish, Akilah is not willing to leave his side and stays to assist him against Alvarez in every way possible. She also decides to have a heart-to-heart with Mark about their past tragedy and shares her concern for him. On the other hand, after learning about Nora's escape, Alvarez realizes his entire operation is in jeopardy if she testifies and gets increasingly desperate. The following scene, Nate assists Nora with essential information before her departure from the island. Meanwhile, Mark hears the approaching sound of a vehicle and quickly grabs a gun, as they quickly flee through the back door. Outside, the same group of armed men emerges from the car, leading to a tense confrontation in the bushes. Both parties exchange gunfire while seeking cover. Amidst the chaos, Nate receives an SOS message from Mark and rushes to his aid. Upon arrival, they engage in a fierce shootout with the assailants, ultimately managing to fend them off. Meanwhile, Manuel and some other guys came to Nora's place only to find out that she was gone. He gets his LAPD partner, whose name is Phil, to set up a safe place for her in Miami. Meanwhile, Nate went to the church entrusting a document to the father for safekeeping in case anything should happen to him. Manuel also shifts all the blame to his former squad and Nora's drug supplier for the mishap, and he reaches out to cartel groups for assistance. Akilah questions Mark about his reluctance to have Nora by their side as a witness, pointing out that her testimony could greatly aid in winning the case against Manuel. However, Mark explains that criminals like Manuel can manipulate the legal system with their wealth, rendering Nora's testimony potentially ineffective. Suddenly, Akilah is overwhelmed with memories of losing her child, expressing her fear of losing Mark as well. Just then, Nate arrives at their meeting spot, only to be discovered brutally attacked and on the verge of death. As they track Nate's assailants, Alvarez's right-hand accomplice and other cartel operatives close in on their location. In the midst of brief gunfights, one of the assailants seizes Akilah despite her struggles to break free. Helpless, she is forcibly taken away by two men and placed into a car, with Mark desperately firing shots as they drive off with her. Mark is emotional and upset as he holds Nate in his final moments. While holding Nate until his last breath reminds him of childhood memories they shared with Akeem. With no other option left, Mark resolves to put an end to Manuel once and for all. The following day, with Nate having already passed away, Mark bursts into the church, interrupting the service with a heart full of fury. He passionately exposes Alvarez's atrocities to the islanders, igniting a shared sense of anger among them. Moved by Mark's determination, the priest hands him the files Nate had entrusted to him. Among them are crucial documents containing evidence and ongoing case files implicating Manuel in money laundering, providing Mark with valuable evidence to use against him. Akilah found herself tied to a chair in an abandoned building, facing a woman who wielded a knife, laughing menacingly as she traced its edge around Akilah's body. Confused and fearful, Akilah demanded to know what the woman wanted from her, but received no response. Suddenly, Manuel entered the scene, explaining that the woman didn't answer because she didn't answer to Akilah, she answered to him. Enraged, Akilah spat at Manuel's face, prompting the woman to retaliate with a harsh slap. Manuel then issued a chilling threat, indicating that Akilah's time might be running out. Mark took the document given to him by the father to the police station where Nate worked, declaring that he was taking over as the acting chief. Later on, Mark went through the documents Nate left behind. But things shift in their favor when two Islander kids spot a place guarded by Manuel's right-hand accomplice and inform Mark about it. He realizes it might be the place where Akilah is being held captive. Phil also decides to join Mark in the fight against Manuel. On seeing Phil, Mark was surprised. He then asks how the girl was doing. Phil assures him that she is safe. Phil asks of Nate only to find out that he has been killed. That same night, Manuel called Mark, informing him that he would return Akilah if Mark brought Nora to the meeting spot the next day. Accepting the deal, Mark swiftly contacted Phil to assemble the team first thing in the morning. The following day, Mark dispatched a group of local police officers led by Phil to rescue Akilah while he confronted Manuel for a showdown. Along the way, Mark was stopped and searched, appearing unarmed. As Manuel stepped out of his car, Mark inquired about Akilah's whereabouts, prompting Manuel to inquire about Nora. Phil and company managed to rescue Akilah, up to which point Mark stalls Alvarez, and finally, after knowing her to be secure, informs Alvarez of his inevitable defeat. After easily knocking down Alvarez's henchman, Mark moves towards the degenerate mogul when the sound of a gunshot is heard. It is initially assumed that Mark gets shot by Alvarez's right-hand man, but it is revealed that the Islanders, led by Tezium, now armed and motivated to bring down Alvarez, have surrounded the place and killed the right-hand man. Mark engages in physical combat with Alvarez, where he humiliatingly ragdolls him, and as Alvarez desperately pulls a knife on him, Mark stabs him to death in the same manner he previously killed Akeem. Finally exacting his revenge on Akeem's killer, Mark has also liberated his home from the clutches of corporate evil. The island ends with him and Akilah contemplating starting their lives together anew while sharing a laugh while seeing Phil's antics.